Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I have to tell you something, people. The Cooper Talk studios are moving. That's right. After 15 years in LA, I am headed back to the East Coast on May 1st. Me and the lovely Joanne decided that, you know what? I can do Cooper Talk anywhere. I can do my freelance PR work anywhere. Our rent here is twice as much as her mortgage that she rents her place out for back there. So we said, you know what? LA is getting too crowded. Burbank, the town I love, just built North America's largest IKEA. Okay, I drove down the street Saturday. The street that I usually just pop right down was backed up 5 blocks deeper. And it's sad to say, and this is what makes me upset, is there's starting to be a really bad homeless population in LA. And I think there's going to be an uprising in a few months. I swear to God, these tent cities are popping up everywhere, and it's making me sad. So I want to leave LA. A few people I know have left LA. They said when they got back east, they just felt the stress disappear. So anyway, we have a great show. We have a guy who's from back east originally, and I saw his band with Cinderella. I saw him at the Galaxy in Somerdale. My guest is Jeff Lamar. How you doing, Jeff?
Good. How are you?
Good. Now you live in Nashville now, or where do you live?
Yes, I live. I live just outside of Nashville, only about 15 minutes out of the city.
Now, what made you? Well, you grew up in the Philadelphia area.
Yes.
And now, what
suburbs like Upper Darby area?
Okay.
Just outside of West Philly.
And we'll talk about your whole career, but what eventually made you want to leave that area? I mean, because I know a lot of people have moved to Nashville, and it's supposed to be a beautiful area, and I heard it's getting more built up and crowded now. But what made you go to Nashville?
Okay, first of all, I didn't want to leave Philly. One by one, everybody just kind of flocked to Nashville. I think this was maybe late 90s. Cinderella wasn't doing so much for, I believe, about 3 years, between 95 and 98. Not so much. And Fred left South Jersey, came to Nashville, and opened a studio in Hendersonville. He bought Conway Twitty's studio and just started a business. And then I think Universal came along and asked us to do a song for a compilation CD, like a greatest hits. They started this thing of putting out old greatest hits, or greatest hits of older bands, but adding a new track or two. So they wanted to do that, and they asked us if we would record a song or two. So what we did was we came down to Nashville and recorded at Fred's studio.
Okay.
There was this 98, and we had so much fun. We hadn't been together in like 3 years. We enjoyed it so much, we decided, hey, why don't we go on tour? We didn't have management. We didn't have a label. We had nothing, no booking agent, nothing. And when we put it out there that we were going to go on tour, it was like, all that happened before the tour even started. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, I want to ask you. Okay, yeah, because I was just wondering, but we're around this. What's that?
So the thing is, I started coming here to work. I still lived in Philly, and Tom moved after 98. I think Tom moved down to Nashville like the very next year. A couple years later, Eric moved down here, and now I kept having to come to Nashville to work, to record, to rehearse for upcoming tours. And finally, in 2004, I took a gig just for the summer with Eric's wife's band, Inga. It was called Naked Beggars. And it was supposed to be for the summer, and it lasted 3 years. So basically, I was like, oh, well, I guess I live here now.
Right. I got to ask you, okay, now, when did you start playing music? We're the same age, and I want to see who some of your musical influences were. When did you start getting into music? Were you, because I look, you play a bunch of instruments. Were you always musically inclined, or did you start later? How did you get into it? And was there people in your family that were musicians that you wanted to follow their path?
Yeah, my older brother, Jack. He played guitar. He was a hippie. You know, he grew up in the '60s. I grew up in the '60s, just about 5 years behind him. You know, and he always, he always had an extensive music collection. Back then, it was albums and the giant, like lots of money put into the huge stereo system that he had going. You know, and he was my biggest influence. All the music that he listened to, I listened to. So as I got older, I started dancing around with. He would work after school, and I'd take out his guitar and like dance in front of a mirror to like Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper, you know, and finally he called me a couple times, wasn't pleased, but he finally showed me a few chords, put out some song books. He gave me my first guitar. Like every time he got a new guitar, he'd give me his old one, you know. And showed me how to figure out songs from songbooks. And I started playing acoustic guitar sitting on the bed, you know, singing too. But yeah, it was mostly learning. I learned the most at the beginning was from Black Sabbath because they were very classic chord progressions, and they made sense to me, like mathematically in my brain. And so yeah, he's the one that started that ball rolling.
Now you started playing, you started getting better, and now when did you decide that this is what you wanted to do? And when did you try to get together with a band? Because I know Philadelphia had a good music scene. There was different clubs in Philly back in the day. When did you sit there and start saying, I'm going to join a band, I'm going to do this? I mean, when did that all happen?
Well, junior high school. Junior high school was like, oh wow, there's a little bit bigger of a world out there. And then that's when I found other people that played. So yeah, my first band was probably 7th or 8th grade. We didn't have a singer because nobody could afford a PA system and nobody could sing, but I found another guitar player. Me and my bass player, Andrew, we took guitar lessons in grade school. But he switched to bass. So me and him basically found other musicians to play with. Found another guitar. Like I was a Zeppelin head. Like I knew every Zeppelin song. So and then I found another guitar player who was all about Hendrix. So we hooked up with this drummer and this other guitar player, and we just jammed. Like I said, we didn't have no singer, but I did all the Zeppelin solos and he did all the Hendrix solos. You know, but it wasn't like a decision. It was just like, let's play, you know, like going outside and playing football. It was, wasn't like I'm deciding to start a band. No, I just found other people to play with. And then from there, it just grew, you know, we found a singer and then other musicians, and it just progressed, you know, into, eventually, because I would move along too. You know, me and Andrew had several different bands through high school, and after high school, lost a little touch, and I hooked up with this other group of kids that played this. Then we were doing like Maiden and Priest, you know, and I just progressed myself. Whenever a new opportunity came up or a better opportunity came up, I would take it.
Okay, so
which led to Cinderella.
Right, because you didn't want to be stagnant. A lot of times guys will sit there and they'll get involved. I used to do stand-up comedy in Philadelphia, and you'd see that, like some of us were like, we got to get out on the road. I don't want to sit here and be doing MC gigs in Philly my whole life. But there were some people that were happy with doing that. But you seemed like you wanted to keep advancing and just getting better at your craft. Yeah,
I wanted to move out of the basement, right. Move away from the, sitting around doing bong hits all night, right. And just jamming. I wanted to actually, when I got offered a gig from a band that worked, I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I was like, wait, I can like do this in clubs. Like I can't just, I was at that point, I was just playing in a basement, partying, and, playing the occasional keg party.
Okay. So. That was in my high school, because I grew up in Cherry Hill, and there'd be like one guy who played guitar, this guy Mike Warren, And he'd get a band together and they'd play a keg party. And it was a big thing. It was like, oh my God, there's a band at the keg party. Usually it's just a keg party with their parents aren't home. We have to keep it quiet. But when there was a parents allowed keg party and there's a band there, it was a big thing.
Yeah, it was funny because we in high school where I rehearsed in our singer's basement, and his cousin, I was dating his cousin, who also lived with him, and they had the coolest mom. So we rehearsed there, and his name is Joe Tartaglia, but we rehearsed there, and my girlfriend lived there, and he's my singer. And I was like, I pretty much lived there, so she would let us have keg parties. This is in high school, man. We'd have keg parties in the basement and play and charge money. Another thing we used to do is beef and beers.
Okay.
Somebody run out a firehouse.
That's a blast from the past.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was always funny when you laugh. Beef and beer. It's like the most simple marketing. It's like just change the F and the R because back then graphic design wasn't as easy as then. As it is now. So it's like, okay, yeah, we basically put beer in beer, but just change an F and put an R.
Right.
So you're playing along now. How did you end up in Cinderella? What was the story behind that? Because it was you guys were around for a long time, but how did you join that band? And I know you weren't in the original band, but how did they find out about you?
I used to open for them in another band called Precious Metal. I got into this band, Precious Metal, because they needed a guitar player and they heard of me or something. Precious Metal was started by Tony Harnell, the singer for TNT.
Okay.
So it was kind of an iconic band. It had been around a long time in South Jersey, and a lot of different South Jersey musicians played in this band. Different formats of this band, different players. But I joined the band and I was like, oh, now I can play in this particular club circuit, which was like you were saying, the Galaxy in Somerdale, New Jersey, the Empire in Northeast Philly. I was like, oh, this is cool. This was a new scene for me. I was probably 21, I think, 21, 22, something like that. And we got to open up for Cinderella a lot. Now, I was only in the band for a couple months, and word around the campfire. First of all, opening for them, it was awesome. And I would run upstairs, get changed, and run right back downstairs and stand right in front of them, and be taking notes and be saying, "Man, they'd be so much better if I was in that band."
Right.
I was that arrogant. I wasn't openly arrogant, but that's what I thought. I was like, "Oh, what I could bring to this band." But anyway, so word around the campfire was, Cinderella's got a record deal. They had been offered many record deals, but with really bad circumstances, like I own you and you work for me and blah blah blah, And so it was Polygram, and it was the same guy that signed Bon Jovi, but they only wanted to sign Tom and Eric. They said, "Oh, you need a better drummer and a flashier guitar player, a Jake E. Lee type." I was like, "That's me." I was like, "I even know Jake. I think our moms hung out together." That part's not true, but I was like, we're both half Asian. And I was like, oh, that's totally me. So anyway, Tom approaches me. He's like, "So you heard what's going on?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Do you want to audition?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" So it was a lot of players from the area. Dave Sabo from Skid Row, he auditioned. Reggie Wu.
Reggie Wu went to my high school.
Oh my God, Reggie Wu's fantastic. He's an amazing guitar player.
He lived in the neighborhood.
Such a sweetheart.
Yeah, he was a year older than me. In fact, his girlfriend, now his wife, they've been together forever. She lived right around the corner from me.
That's cool. We auditioned the same day. He sat and watched my audition. I sat and watched his audition. But so that's how it came about. I I also had the inside track because I had gone to school with Tom's girlfriend, who eventually became his first wife, and Eric's first wife. I went to school with both of them. So I did sound for Tom's first wife, Emily. I did sound. She was in a punk band, and I did sound for them in high school. So I definitely had, like, I'm sure I had some, the inside track on the gig.
So they get the gig. How do they break it to you? Do they say, okay, here's the gig, and then now once you get the gig, do you have to sit there and learn all those songs, or were you learning a bunch of them when you heard they might be needing someone?
Well, I learned. Tom. I met Tom at the 7-Eleven. Turns out, me and Tom lived like 5 minutes from each other and didn't even know it. But I met him at a 7-Eleven. He gave me a cassette tape, believe it or not. Back then. Cassette tape of like 10 songs. He goes, he said, just learn 5. They're demos, of course. He said, just learn 5 of them. And of course I learned all 10. He said, you're going to audition, He's like, oh, by the way, Reggie Woo's going to audition the same day. You want to go first or second? I was like, there's no way in hell I'm following Reggie Woo.
Right.
I was like, I'll go first. I show up and Reggie's already there. I was like, oh, you asshole. That's a joke. I was like, yeah, like I told you, he's such a sweetheart. But he sat right in front of me, watched my audition. I was like, holy crap. But I was like, all right. So I pulled in, sat in the same chair watching his audition. But anyway, yeah, I learned all 10 songs. Tom called me back, I guess in about a week. Not sure the time period, but he's like, I think we may have found a drummer, because they were auditioning drummers too at the same time. And he said, we may have found a drummer. Would you mind coming back and playing with him? I was like, sure. He said, did you learn the other 5 songs? I said, absolutely. So that's what happened. We played the other 5 songs with a drummer named Jim Dernick. And at the end of the audition, they were like, well, how would you guys like being in this band? I was like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. That's when they hired us.
So you get hired. Now, you didn't have a record. They didn't have a record deal in place yet. They were interested in Eric and Tom, but they wanted a better drummer and someone like you, a flashier guitarist. So now what happens once you guys join? You start playing gigs, and the record producers and execs start coming out. How do you end up getting signed? What happens?
That is how it all happened. It was like we started rehearsing together, and then playing the same clubs. We rehearsed at the Galaxy upstairs. So, we just like moved downstairs. We just, hump our gear down the steps. And played every Saturday night. It was every Saturday night at midnight. So that's what we started doing, playing. Also writing and recording. There was a recording studio upstairs also. So it was definitely one-stop shopping, And so we did that for a little while, and then Derek Shulman came out, and, it was all pending his approval. And he approved. He approved. We continued to do that for another year, I believe, demoing until I was only with the band, I think, about a year, and they put us in the studio. This is 1985, I believe. 85, we went into the studio to record Night Songs.
Now, what is it like, man? You sit there, you're playing, and it seems to be, it happened pretty quickly for you in the fact that when you joined Cinderella, things started kicking in. What is it like for a bunch of young guys who have been busting their ass? As you said, you're recording upstairs, you're rehearsing, you're then playing gigs. What is it like when you finally get this recording contract and you have to go in the studio? Are you sitting there? Are you excited? In the back of your mind, are you saying, man, I hope we don't screw up? I mean, what goes through your mind? And you guys are young. I mean, you face it. It's like, I always think, when we're 22, 23, 24, 25, we all have a little bit of attitude. We feel invincible. I mean, What was it like when you guys went in the studio? And was it hard to sit there, and be told that doesn't sound right or this doesn't sound right?
It was very exciting, and it was a lot of fun. I had developed this new family over the past year, and then we all get to travel somewhere together and play music, and all the songs were written, but then we start working with a producer that knows way better than us, and it's a learning experience. It's exciting. It's fun. It's hard work. It's long hours. It's all the above. Really, it was. I guess that's the best way I can explain it.
Now, what was it like when you guys were shooting the videos then? Because videos, I always tell people, I'm an MTV generation guy, and videos were so important, and everyone, like I had the guy from the Flock of Seagulls on, and he told me how when they shot their first video, they were just like, here, there was like no budget at all. How was it for your guys' videos? Because you were somewhat of an unknown band, but you guys had the good look. I mean, how did they put the videos together? Were you involved in them, or did they just said, we're shooting this video for this song, here's what we're going to do, show up and kick ass?
Well, they basically, I guess they hire a video company, get a producer, get a director, get somebody to write a storyline. We weren't involved in any of that, but we had approval. There were directors and producers that the company that they hired. These people came to us with storyboards and talked about what they had in mind, and we could say yes or no or that's they were coming up with cool stuff, and it's basically all it was all playing off the name Cinderella. So they came up with the evil stepsisters and the whole thing, which lasted for 3 videos.
Now, when the album comes out, because it ended up selling very well, what were your guys' expectations? And were you just sitting there thinking it's going to come out, we're going to tour, we're going to get more fans? What were your expectations? And then did you think it would sell as much as it did? And were you also happy with all the tracks on the album, or were there some that the record company said, now you got to put that on, and you guys are like, oh, Christ, not that one. We want something different.
Well, I'll tell you, the record label didn't interfere at all. I mean, they were really great to us the whole time. I mean, here's an example, was we had a budget. I don't know, we had a budget of a small budget. We're a new band. I think they gave us a budget of like $50,000 or something. So, after every month or so, I mean, we took like five or 6 months to make this record. So every month or so, maybe every 2 months, we'd have to go to the record label and ask for more money. I think the record ended up costing us like $265,000. But every time we had to ask for more money, it was pending approval of what we were doing. So somebody would come down from the label, usually Derek Shulman, but they had to like what we were doing. And I don't believe we had any negative feedback. They always loved what we were doing, and then said, okay, here's some more money.
Now, that's the best way to go. I mean, they always hear
Right?
horror stories, here. So now the album starts selling. Now, you were playing places like the Empire and the Galaxy. When do you start touring? I know you open for like some bands, the big bands. When do you start touring on a grandiose scale where you're playing cities and overseas? Was that right after the album, or how long after the album did that start?
After we were done recording the record, we continued, because it takes a little time to actually put it out, press it, artwork, marketing, tour planning. It took a few months after we were done recording, so we just went back to playing the same 2 clubs. We played the Galaxy every Saturday night, and we played the Empire twice a month. So we only did six shows a month. But but we were finally able to make a living not make a living, but we were put on a salary, and the salary was like small. It wasn't like, we took a huge advance. All the advance money was for the recording of the record. And we only took, as far as salaries for ourselves, so we didn't have to work, we only took what we were making at our previous job.
Okay.
I was an auto detailer. I was making $125 a week, and that's all I was making during the recording of the record until we toured, So yeah. Wait, what was the question?
No, well, who was the tour? I mean, you were playing those clubs. How long ago?
That's right. Well, so we went back to playing the clubs until Polygram arranged a tour for us, Mercury Polygram, and they came up with opening up for Loudness. So we would fly out to the West Coast, and I was a huge fan of Loudness at the time, being from my mother's country and all. But that was awesome. That was a dream come true. I was like, holy crap, really? So we did like auditoriums and small theaters. How do you get
used to that?
But what was funny about that is it was Poison's first tour also. So us and Poison came out at the same time on like on opposite ends of the country, but came together to open up for a Japanese heavy metal band.
Right.
So we started, and then we kind of like flip-flopped, us and Poison. We flipped, I guess, depending on what city we were in. Like, we opened, then Poison would open, then we opened, Poison would open. So we did this for about 2 weeks. And David Lee Roth had just put out Eat 'Em and Smile, his first solo record away from Van Halen. And both us and Poison were up for the opening slot. And we got it. So we did that tour. That was our first of many tours with Poison. We did that tour only for about 2 weeks, and then we were thrust onto arena stages for 5 months.
Now, what's that?
5 months. 5 months with David Lee Roth, then another 7 months with Bon Jovi on the Slippery When Wet tour.
So what's that like, man? Because you guys go, as you said, you're playing the Empire and the Galaxy, and listeners, the Galaxy wasn't a big place. I mean, it's a legendary rock club. I think it's like a veterinarian or something. I think whatever. It's gone. Like I was back because my girlfriend, I grew up in New Jersey, but I was bi-coastal for 2 years, about a few years ago. And I remember we drove by and I'm like, oh my God, that was a Galaxy. And it's like now you're like, what the hell happened, man? Keep a landmark of rock and roll. But what was it like? Because you're sitting there and you're going from playing these clubs to auditoriums and people who dig the music, because David Lee Roth and Bon Jovi. What was it like for you guys when you just started jamming? Was it like a dream come true? And did you really get into? I mean, did that crowd feed your performances? Because I'm sure you guys are on stage. You're glammed out. You look great. I mean, it must have been an amazing feeling.
Well, you pretty much put all the answers in your question. It was all that, man. It was all that in a bag of chips, man. It was like, wow, we get to do this in front of more people. What we already enjoy doing, it's nothing like it. Making a record is kind of hard, and it takes a lot of attention and detail and long hours. It's the work part. Playing live in front of an audience is the payoff. That's just like you said. It's like, it's a dream come true. And the bigger the crowd, the more I feed off of it. Absolutely.
Now, where did you guys find your clothes? Like, I mean, it's like, we always sat there. You look so cool in the video, and I was in that stage where I like the metal and I like the Duran Duran, but you couldn't find that crap at Macy's or Wanamaker's. and you guys, I mean, was there a circle? Because I always wonder, where would you find your clothes? Because you couldn't find that stuff on South Street I mean, would you guys have people make your clothes? I mean, because you guys always had that special metal look, and even your hats were cool. Like if you wore hats, like we had like if back then, if I wore a cowboy hat, I'd look like a redneck. It'd be like a Stetson. Where did you guys find your clothes? Because in your videos, you're always decked out. You got the ruffled shirt. You got the long. Where would you guys get your clothes? I always wondered, where do heavy metal guys get their clothes at?
Well, you got to understand that before we're rock stars, we're getting our clothes at the mall.
Right.
You know, we're taking like girls' clothes and cutting them up. You know, I used to get my spandex from a store called Danskin.
Okay, I remember that place.
You know, and we would doctor them up. Like what you see on the first record cover on Night Songs is stuff that we bought ourselves, found on South Street, or like girls' clothes in a thrift store. You know, just pieced stuff together. You know, and so the first video also was the same. It was all stuff that we scrounged up from our little sisters, or, you know, or you know, like you said, like a store on South Street or something. But this is before Hot Topic,
right.
Of course. But I think by the second video, we had a clothes designer. You know, we were still trying to find our way, but I think the Save Me video, it's got live clips. I think by that time, I'm not sure, some of that stuff might have been store-bought, you know, and just raggedy, you know, kind of like shredded rags, pieces of your T-shirt, like the pieces that you cut out of your T-shirt, you tile on your arms and legs, stuff like that. But then third video, I think, was Nobody's Fool was the second video, right? I don't know. Nobody's Fool. Then we had like clothes that was made by a designer. We found this girl in L.A. named Jackie King, and she continued to make our clothes throughout most of our career.
Now, the first album did very well.
Mm-hmm.
It hit number 3, I believe. I mean, it just started. What do you? And it started selling. And it was multi-platinum, or
that ended up selling 3 million.
So, what is that like when all of a sudden you have this record? You guys it's your first album, and it starts selling and selling. What's going through your mind? Because all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, we are bona fide rock stars. Our album is sold a lot. What goes through someone's mind? Do you start thinking about the follow-up record and thinking if you can top that, or do you sort of just kick back and go for the ride?
Well, first of all, I didn't really know that until I got my first royalty check. I was like, you know, because we were on tour, having a blast, making more money than we made at our day jobs, but you know, we were making a fortune, we were making a good living now, but I didn't realize because there was a payroll and there was a budget, okay? But I got my first royalty check and I was like, holy shit.
Right.
The first thing I did was I bought my mom a car. I was like, my mom never owned a new car.
What'd you get her?
And she picked out like something, I forget what it was, Ford Fairmont. They don't even make them anymore. But it was a car that she picked out, you know. I was like, she was thrilled about it, and I was glad to give back to my family and stuff. But that's when I was like, wow, this could be pretty good. I didn't start thinking about the follow-up then, but yeah, once the tour was over and like we had gone triple platinum, yeah, that's when you start thinking about the next record and what you're going to do and what you're going to do that's new. You know, Tom being the main songwriter and all, most of the pressure, or maybe not even pressure, his responsibility was on him. You know, so yeah, I didn't really think that it was pressure until maybe the third record.
Okay.
when the third record didn't sell as much as the first or second, that's when I was like, oh.
Now, when you go in for that second one, though, after the first one being so popular and you start recording it, is there a little bit of cockiness? Because you're like, hey, we're coming off this multi-platinum album, triple platinum album, we're making money, we're touring. I mean, was there a little bit of bravado, like, hey, you know what, we're happening? I mean, were you guys all pretty down to earth?
I think we're all pretty down to earth. I mean, maybe a little more cocky. I don't know about cocky. I think maybe a little more confident. I think that's a better way to put it. Our first record, we were like learning from Andy Johns, our producer. He's telling us what to do, and he's telling us how, what we do well and what we suck at. So it was like, ooh, really? What? So the second record, same producer, we knew him better. We were way more experienced. He made me a way better guitar player. So yeah, more confident, not so much cocky, but I think we absolutely knew a little bit more about what we were doing.
Now, when the second album came out, were you starting to headline your tours, or were you opening, or where was your position in the food order?
The first 2 months, I can't remember what order this came in, but we did 2 months with AC/DC, and then 2 months with Judas Priest. I don't remember which one came first, but then we started headlining. We put our first headlining tour together with two new bands at the time, brand new bands at the time, was Winger and Bullet Boys.
Okay. Now, what is it like when you open for like Maiden? Because you had listened to that. I mean, not Maiden, Judas Priest. Like you had listened to them as when you were younger. What is it like when you sit there and you're actually opening for them and getting to know them? What's that feeling? Is it sort of like you're surreal? Like, man, I used to play this stuff in the basement.
Well, yeah, it's thrilling, first of all, but even beyond that, it's a learning experience. You always learn from the people that you open for, or I did. I always took notes, mental notes. Opening for Roth, I was like, ooh, this is how it's done. Opening for Bon Jovi, I hung out with I hung out with Richie a lot, and his guitar tech. Like I'd be down like underneath the stage watching from Richie's. You know the ego ramps that go on up the sides?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Well, there's steps that go down under those too. And that's where like the guitar tech is, where all the guitars and the cooler and the drugs and every now and then a naked chick. This is what I learned from Richie.
Well, there you go.
As how to make that your own little home. Like in between songs, and his guitar tech. So every tour, you open for somebody and they've been doing it a long time. You're like, oh yeah, I get it. This is what I do. So basically, I modeled my offstage area after Richie Sambora. This is what you do. I was like, I get it, and this is what everybody does. But as far as like Priest and AC/DC, you're just watching them on stage going, oh my God, I need to be that good.
Okay.
It's just the seasoned professionalism, And I'll tell you, the coolest thing I learned about Priest is their endings. And the way they end songs. They always end a song with a chord that lasts this long. It goes. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but you can, even after a bash out. No, they like. And it ends on an upbeat.
What?
And the light man is dead on. The light man for Priest would be dead on every single hit and every single ending, and it was like he was part of this. It was like he was part of the band, That's how tight the light guy was for Priest.
Now, you guys played the Spectrum, I'm sure.
Yeah, on our first 2 tours.
Now, what's that like?
Yeah. With Roth, we sold out 2 shows, and with Bon Jovi, we sold out 4.
Now, that must be a great feeling because you're from Upper Darby, and the closest thing, the Tower Theater is in Upper Darby. But what was it like playing this? Like you're playing your hometown and you're playing in a legendary and still legendary, even though it's gone. What is the feeling when you're going on stage at the Spectrum?
Well, once I got on stage, it was thrilling. The idea of it was thrilling. The idea of it all was like, I can't believe I'm going to play there. But in actuality, it was hectic as shit. 2 shows with David Lee Roth. I had to buy 50 tickets for each show for my family and friends. And then dealing with the guest list and calls from people like, just wanting tickets and, trying to accommodate everybody was a fucking hassle.
Right.
And it was a real fucking headache. But I was thrilled to do it because I wanted these people to see me on the Spectrum stage, And I went through the same thing with Bon Jovi. 50 tickets each of 4 shows I bought, So, yeah, real hectic. And even one of the shows, I don't remember which show it was, even one of the shows, like, my guitars didn't work, and it was, it was a fucking nightmare. One of the shows, one of the 6, anyway, like my acoustic guitar broke or didn't work, and I fucking kicked it over. Because I put an acoustic guitar on a stand, so I can just pull in behind it and play with an electric guitar on my body, and it like cutting in and out, and I just got so pissed I fucking kicked it like right down into the pit, So it was pretty fucking hectic, but at the same time thrilling.
Now, your third album did well, but didn't Tom have voice problems after that?
Not real sure when he started having problems, but yeah, but that timing sounds right. I mean, he didn't have any voice problems through the recording of Heartbreak Station, but my timeline is a little off.
Right. But what's that like when he starts having voice problems? Like, that's the band. You guys are a band. You're a group of 4. I mean, what's going through all your minds?
It's scary. It's definitely scary because, the first time he had to cancel, we had to cancel a show because he couldn't sing, let alone talk. Yeah, it was scary. I was like, oh shit. Well, what do we do now? What's this going to cost us? Are we going to be able to make it up? Is Tom going to be all right? First of all, So, when you hear, throughout history, you hear about people, singers having to have surgery on their throat. You always hear about nodes, or at least I did. I always heard, about singers. They always eventually get nodes, which are like calluses on their vocal cords, and this wasn't Tom's problem though. Tom had I think at one time he developed a cyst on one of his vocal cords. So yeah, he's had to have a few surgeries.
So he comes back and you record another album. I still call them albums. That's the one thing I always do. And how was that? How did that come across to the listeners?
Still Climbing?
Yeah.
It didn't come across to listeners. It was, yeah. I mean, at that point, we were forgotten. We were forgotten at Mercury Polygram. Mercury Polygram got into all kinds of trouble, all kinds of legal trouble, and had a clean house. And there was nobody there on our team. And it was the early 90s, so everybody's about grunge, and recording this record at that time, and by the time we had finished that record, the whole climate of music had changed, and we were pretty much, forgotten at Polygram.
So what do you do to be resilient? I mean, you guys are musicians. This is what you know. It's something that, you're musicians. You guys had cool clothes made for you. It's like, what goes through your mind? Because it's like, your product's still good, and people will listen because I still listen to Cinderella. I love Cinderella. But, what goes through your mind? Because it's like, is it sort of like an athlete? Because you're all young guys.
Yeah, I guess you could compare it to being an athlete on the downside of his career, because when we toured Still Climbing, we went back to playing clubs. I mean, there were big clubs, but like club concert venues, like House of Blues and stuff like that. I was like, okay, well, this is the downside. I didn't know how much longer it would last because, and personally, I was going through hardships as well. Drugs, bad marriage, failed marriage, that kind of stuff, and it was the 90s, and bad drugs were happening. So, and also being on the downside, I was like, okay, well, I might as well have fun with it. And that's around the time, like when I told you earlier that Cinderella hadn't done anything from 95 to like 98. That was it. That was 95. That was our last tour. Or at that point, it was our last tour before we got back together in 98.
Now, when you get back...
I thought it was over. At that point, I thought, okay, I thought it was over.
So you thought Cinderella was done, you don't know what you're going to do now, you have no idea, and you're probably shitting yourself.
Somewhere around there, me and my brother opened a pizza shop.
Where at?
In Upper Darby.
Okay. Was it good pie, man? You can't get good pie in L.A. That's one thing I'm happy about moving back east, the good pizza.
Oh, yeah, it was good pizza. Absolutely.
What was the name of it?
Bada Bing.
Oh, man. See, and then the Sopranos ripped you off. You should sue those bastards.
Bada Bing. No, Sopranos was already out.
Okay.
I think we ripped them off. Bada Bing Pizzeria.
So what's it like then when you're sitting there? You guys eventually got back together, but what's it like when all of a sudden, you have to work, but is it just something, is your life is completely different, but were you happy or were you still partying a lot or where was your mind frame?
Well, I wasn't, I think my partying ended probably a year after the Still Climbing tour ended because it got real bad and then I had to do a rehab.
Okay.
So yeah, around 96. In 96, I got clean, and like I said, I can't. I told you my timeline is off, but
right.
Somewhere around there, me and my brother did that pizza shop, and then I told you earlier that 98 we got a call, and it was like, oh, you mean I can do this again? And we started working. We started working on a new record. We started, demoing. Went back on tour. Started this whole thing with Poison. We would go on tour with each other every 2 years. That was fun.
Now, and I'm sure the fans were loving it because we're all the difference I always say is when you go I'm a big Springsteen fan. When you go to a Springsteen concert, there's a bunch of people our age. Of course, Springsteen has a lot more accountants and lawyers. When you go to a metal concert, if you guys are touring, there's women, but they're still, they're still wearing the real tight spandex, some of them, which they shouldn't be, but they do. But I mean, it must have been great to get back on stage and, because it must have shown the appreciation of your fans.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it was totally cool. It was I guess, early 2000s. I think 2000 may have been the first of the next few tours with Poison and, with other bands sprinkled in there. Like we did Firehouse and Dokken and Slaughter and Faster Pussycat, and all these bands sprinkled in throughout these different tours with us and Poison. And we did one ourselves too, without Poison. Like I said, every 2 years maybe we may have done a few. But yeah, it was so much fun. Yeah, the fans coming out was like a resurgence. Everybody kept telling, "Oh, 80s is making a comeback." And I still hear that. I still hear people, "Oh, 80s is making a comeback." I was like, that comeback was in 2000.
Hey, you'd be surprised, man. There's these 80s concerts in LA that sell out, dude. It's amazing. Now, you also, in the last few years, you recorded a solo album, right?
Yes, I did.
Now, what made you want to do that? And what's that like, different from being with a band? You said Tom wrote a lot of the songs. But when you wrote the solo album, what made you decide to want to record your own solo album? And what was the process?
Well, it was something I've always threatened to do. It's like I always threatening to my manager and my wife and my son and that kind of thing. I was like, oh, one of these days I'm going to make a solo record. It's going to be heavy and I'm going to play all the instruments and I'm going to produce it. Finally, our tour manager Larry, the last tour Cinderella did, I believe, was 2013. And at the end of the tour, Larry came to me and said, look, Tom didn't want anybody else to know this yet until the tour was over, but he's putting out a solo record. Like, he had kept this secret. He said he didn't want to distract, he didn't want to do any interviews about it. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want anybody to talk about it until the Cinderella tour was over, so it didn't distract from the band. But I remember just getting off the bus the morning after the last show and Larry taking me aside and telling me this. He goes, yeah, he didn't want anybody to know till this was over, and so now you have to make your solo record. I'm like, wait, what? He said, yeah, this is you've been threatening to do this for so long now. So Larry and my wife Debbie are the ones that pushed me. I mean, it's like, because I was ready to come home and take a nap for a week.
Right.
They're like, nope. I already had all the songs written. So the songs were already there. They were already demoed and everything. So I just had to I basically just had to duplicate them and play them better and sing them. And some of them didn't have lyrics. I'd come up with lyrics for some of them, But yeah, it was. And after that, it was my wife Debbie, that pushed me. And as far as the process, it was work. Like I always say about studio work, it was hard work, but it was fun for me and my engineer. My engineer is Ronnie Honeycutt, and we just had a blast working together. And it was just the two of us. I hired drummers, and this one drummer in particular, Christopher Williams, just unbelievable. He plays with Accept now. That tells you how good he is. Working with him was a blast. I worked with Troy Lucetta.
Oh, Troy's going to be on my... Troy, I just talked to Troy on the phone. He's going to be on my show next week, I think.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Troy lives around here. I just ran into him at Walmart a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
I swear to God. True story. But I went up to his studio, and he actually recorded the first song. And then Fred, I sent it out to Fred. The first song's called No Strings. And I sent it out to Fred in L.A., and he mixed it for me. So I actually made a video for that. You can see it on YouTube. Just Jeff LaBar, No Strings.
Okay.
Coincidentally, I mean, it has nothing to do with guitar strings. So right. my first solo song is called No Strings. I'm like, wait, you're a guitar player, aren't you? So, yeah, the record's called One for the Road. It's an EP that Rat Pack, like when Larry took me aside and said, now's the time, and by the way, I have a record deal for you at Rat Pack. I was like, oh shit, then I guess I have to do this.
Now, will you do another one, do you think?
I don't know. I haven't picked up a guitar in so long. Every now and then I do studio work around here, like friends or some people like ask me to, cut a demo for them or whatever. But that's about it. I'm really concentrating on I'm going to the Art Institute here in Nashville for culinary, a culinary associate's degree program. So I've been concentrating on that, man. It's not just cooking, but I got to take like general education classes too, like English and math. I have to take psych.
Oh wow! Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you.
And I started working as a cook too. So, I've been doing that. I play every now and then. Not doing it for a living anymore, but every now and then somebody offers me, gives me an offer I can't refuse.
Right.
Okay.
So you're becoming a chef now. Why do I have a feeling with your backstory? Why do I have a feeling in the back of the mind that you're either going to end up in the next 2 years, you're going to be on Hell's Kitchen or Chopped? I'm telling you, you should get on Celebrity Chopped, or you should just get on Chopped, because you have the perfect backstory. And would you ever do Hell's Kitchen, or is it just too crazy?
No, I watched some of those shows, the competition cooking shows. There's no way I could hold up.
Okay.
I'm a good cook, but under pressure, I tend to cut my fingers.
Right.
How many times I've bled
right.
in class. But yeah, under pressure is tough, man. I'm going to need. I've been working as a cook for about 2 years now. Low pressure, but you just got to make the food fast. But it's nothing fancy though. The fancy stuff I'm learning in culinary school now, and that's making sauces and food, intricate food dishes from around the world. So I'm learning that now, but in the meantime, working as a basic cook.
Okay. Well, man, I'm glad we got in touch. I'm glad you came on. I know you're busy with school on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I was just going through my Facebook, and I always send people out, messages, and you got back to me. And it was great. Now, where can we find your solo album?
You can either get it at ratpack.com or my website is jefflabar.com. If you go to my website, jefflabar.com, I'll put together what we call La Bundle. Now, my wife started this thing by putting "la" in front of everything.
Okay.
My La TV. It's my La Drink, my La Phone. So I offer a La Bundle for pretty cheap. It's an autographed CD, an autographed 8x10, and a couple of signature guitar picks.
Cool, man. Well, I want to thank you for coming. So people, go look them up. Go on YouTube, No Strings Attached. Watch that video.
No.
Wait.
Not No Strings.
Right.
It's No Strings.
No strings. All right, no strings.
No strings attached.
Well, it got me confused because I thought you couldn't play guitar with no strings. So people, check him out. Jeff Labar, and it's spelled, you can go, it's Labar. Exactly how it sounds, but I know people screw up. So people, do that. Follow me on Twitter, at Cooper Talk. I'm at Cooper Talk. I tweet all the time. You can tweet me there. Also, go to coopertalk.net. I have over 590 episodes up there. You can email me, Cooper, at coopertalk.net. I'll get back to you. Instagram, Words with Friends, Cooper Talk 1. And on Instagram, you see a lot of stuff about my show and a lot of pictures of food. Because you remember when I had that heart problem, I wrote a cookbook. So you can go see pictures of that, and you go to my other website, stopthesalt.com. It's 120 low-sodium recipes. No pictures of the food to intimidate you guys. It's cooking for one. It's cooking for a guy. No major list of ingredients. If you don't have cumin, don't worry. I have no cumin in the recipes. So you can get there. You can get it at Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com, which people are doing instead of getting it from me. And if you buy it from me, I make more money. Plus, I'm moving. I'm moving in 2 months. I have 60 books I have to get rid of. So go to stopthesalt.com and get that. So please do that. Go to Jeff's website. Keep listening to the Cooper Talk. Cooper at coopertalk.net. And I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins. I will talk to you guys next week.